Why the hell haven't you invested in something in your backyard?
The struggle that we have is that for MedTech, the most difficult part is commercialization. It's not necessarily product development, because there's a lot of really cool products that do really well. It's not necessarily getting regulatory approval. It's not necessarily going through the process, but it's how do you get somebody to pay for it? And also, not even just how do you get somebody to pay for it, but how do you then grow and scale when they pay for it? And the struggle is like, there's great devices, there's great technology, there's unbelievable research and unbelievable imaging that's doing amazing. But the commercialization question is one that people do not think about, in my opinion, as much as they should be. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, cheers.
Okay. This is going to be a long-winded opener. We're currently at JPM 2024. We have known each other for over 3 years at this point. We are at the height of COVID networking, voracious networkers together. You live in Toronto. We're down south of the border in the United States. For the past years, we have sent deals to each other. Some of them got funded.
Yep.
We've discussed, we actually were on the previous podcast, MedTech Money, together.
Yep.
You've accomplished so much. You actually wrote a couple books that we're going to definitely dive into. But the craziest thing is we've never met each other in person until right now.
Literally not, yeah.
But we have talked about wine. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. You're living in Toronto.
Yep.
We've geeked out over the Niagara County, Niagara on the Lake wine situation.
Oh, yeah.
The area. And if you have, by the way, anyone who's listening in right now, right over the border north of Buffalo, Niagara County, there's wine there. It's phenomenal wine. It's also south of Toronto. Heavily recommend you go check it out.
Yeah.
Blow that up. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But right now we're drinking something out of California. 2021 Exit West. I thought it was a cool name. It's a red blend. So it says choose your exit. Well, you're a venture capitalist, so
ideally we get some.
Yeah, so hopefully you get some exits.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm super, super excited to be here right now because not only are we meeting in person, this is going to be an additive to what we did on MedTech Money, which was a pure audio podcast. Now we get to be in person together. We get to geek out over our wine thing. We get to hear your story again, but even a longer version of it. And you've written books, which I've always wanted to do. So what I want to do right now is jump into the MedTech Startup Podcast, where we're about to get inside your mind, your heart, and your guts of being a investor. You're both a life science and MedTech investor, but we're going to qualify that. And I think the best place to start is, besides knowing that you love the wine that's in your hand right now, and we're going to have fun doing this, we want to know who you are, so let's start with that. And then we're going to go into some questions that's going to educate the audience on what's going on in Canada. What does it mean to be a physician, MD, who turned into being a VC? How you make your investments? What do you invest in? What does it mean to write a book? And then the value of media behind all this in this world that we live in. So let's just jump into it.
Cool.
You are Anish Kaushal, investment associate at Amplitude Venture, based in Toronto. And right now we're on the MedTech Startup Podcast. So Anish, let's start off with the basics. Who are you? Where are you from? How'd you build your life? What led you to getting into Amplitude? And once you get there, we'll ask you what Amplitude does.
Firstly, thank you so much for this. It's been awesome. The fact that we, to your point, are doing this for the first time in person is kind of nuts. I never thought we would bond over Niagara wine. And I remember you gave me a lot of tips when I went on a trip, actually, with a bunch of friends of mine. So I do really appreciate that and say that. So yeah, as you mentioned, name's Anish, from Toronto, born and raised, grew up there my whole life, just outside of the city. Was a suburb kid, went to public school my whole life. I went to, so as I was finishing high school, had this path, really like science and math. That's kind of what you did. I had Indian parents. What do you do if you're in that situation? You get kind of pushed to go to medicine. So that was sort of the goal. That was the idea. That was what I thought I wanted at the time. And then I got to high school and I started taking economics and accounting, particularly economics. And I was like, oh, this is like really interesting and really cool. And then also I ended up watching, I don't know if you're familiar with it, Wall Street 2 with Shia LaBeouf and Michael Douglas. That movie was like whoa, what the hell is this and what's going on? And so that was kind of my like intro into, okay, is there this whole other world that I didn't know about or I wasn't aware of? I was like, okay, maybe I should take a look at that. So anyway, when I was applying to university, applied to like a lot of business programs and all the science and medicine programs. I think I ended up writing like, I don't know, 100 applications or something really dumb. But it worked out and paid off at the end. So ended up getting into a lot of them. But I got into medical school in the UK. And so, I was 17 at the time. I was 16 at the time when I got in, so very young. And I was like, if I have the opportunity to move to Scotland, this new place I'd never been to before, and didn't really know much about, and get a medical degree in 6 years, that's pretty cool and pretty interesting. So, I decided to take the opportunity, moved there in 2012. And spent 6 years there. So I was in St. Andrews for 3 years, which people might know for the home of golf, and also a lot of scotch and whiskey, as you can imagine.
Nice.
Exactly. And then went to Edinburgh for 3 years. And through that time, also spent some time in Canada. So I lived in Edmonton for 4 months. I did a bunch of clinical electives there.
But you're originally from Canada.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Originally from Canada. Yeah, Canadian through and through. And so, yeah, I was in Edmonton. And so that was my second last year of before I was graduating. And that was when I really got to see what it was like to work in Canada and work in medicine. Because up till then, you're a student, you don't really get a lot of responsibility, your job's not really there. So that's when I was kind of like, okay, this is like fine, but this is not what I wanted. And like, I'm not excited about it. Like I never once woke up excited to go to the hospital, or excited about what I was doing. It was just a job, which is fine. And there's a lot of people that do a lot of great things, but for me, it was not it. And then ended up applying to school, to residency after that. And didn't get in, and didn't do very well on an exam, and so I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Like I have this medical degree, I'm a doctor, but like I can't practice in Canada, so like what am I going to do? So interesting conversation with my parents, as you can imagine. And initially the goal was actually to go back to school, so I was going to go do a master's program. It was a year. It was in London. It was in pharma and drug discovery. And I had a friend who went through the program, got a job out of it, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. You got an industry job, like get to live in London. That'd be super fun. So that kind of happened, and then. Life happens in unique ways and strange ways, and heard about the world of venture capital, and I know we can probably get into it at sort of later on in the conversation. But yeah, got introduced to this world, ended up at a fund called M Ventures, based in Amsterdam. So moved to Amsterdam, lived there for 7 months, which was really cool. It was a corporate venture capital fund of Merck, a very large pharma company, and so worked on the therapeutics team. I was 23 at the time. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. This makes no sense, but I'm here. So that was really fun. And then as I was finishing that, I was only an internship program, so it only lasted 6 months. And halfway through, I was like, I really like this job, but I can't stay. Like they don't have a job for me. So I reached out to like 100 VCs around the world, spoke to everyone that would speak to me. Like Amplitude came by, and they were Canadian. They were a brand new fund. It was people that were really smart, doing really cool things in Canada. And they gave me the opportunity to move home. And I was in Europe at this point for 7 years, lived there for a little while. Really enjoyed it, really loved it. But to come home to Canada, and eventually Toronto, because that was the goal, where my family's from, that would be awesome. Moved to Amplitude, started in 2019. I was one of the early employees there before we had any money. And now we're managing $500 million and been there 4.5 years. And it's been a lot of fun. So, yeah.
So now we know who you are.
Yes.
There's a huge mic drop question that I'm just going to jump out in front of, and then I'm going to come back to Amplitude. But one of the cool things about our 3 years together is I've been sending deal flow to you. You've been sending deal flow to me. You're an investor. We're a recruitment firm. We've shared a bunch of contact, power networking together. But Amplitude wants to make a MedTech investment, but they haven't.
We have not yet. Not since I've been there. 4.5 years.
That's where the story is stopping for right now. We're going to come back to that question in a minute, because all you MedTechers out there who think that there's only a few investors out there, there's actually a lot more that they want to invest in you. We're going to figure out why they haven't yet, okay? So there's something called limitations. We'll figure that out. Anyway, Amplitude.
Yes.
What is Amplitude? It started in 2019. What do you guys invest in? What's the thesis? Why are you here at JPM?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe to give a bit of context for the history, and then we can go into Amplitude. So it was started by our two managing partners, Dion and JF, and then a few other people that worked at what was called the BDC. So it's the Business Development Bank of Canada. It's a crown corporation that's based in Canada. And so they're a small team. We used to run the healthcare fund at the BDC. And so they actually had a number of successful exits, including a company called Clementia, where they were the first investor, the first check, and it got sold for $1 billion. So as you can imagine, they did very well, and so did the Crown Corporation. But they wanted to spin out and do their own thing. So they left late 2018 to really spin out and try to do something. And then I was hired in mid 2019, so like June, July 2019, with a couple other folks, and we were the starting team. And we had no money at that point. We were like late stages of potentially getting our first close. But yeah, we were. We're figuring out as you're talking about entrepreneurship. We were flying the plane while it's burning and it's crashing and everything. And so in terms of Amplitude and the thesis, and really the idea was like, how do we leverage and take really cool Canadian science, build really good companies, and scale them on a world stage and compete with the rest of the world? Because Canada, just in terms of scale and size, it's not even close to the US, right? In no way, shape, or form. But disproportionately, we have a lot of really cool science, a lot of really good research, a lot of really good talent, particularly on the early stage side, particularly you with young people, but less on the executive management side. And so our thing was like, and also a lot of times as the companies in Canada, they don't necessarily get the amount of money and capital that they need to really grow and really compete with US companies. So it's like, well, can we raise a bigger fund, put in larger amounts of money into companies, help them really scale and grow, and then compete with US firms, and then also go raise US capital. So the fund was started in 2018-19, as I mentioned, $200 million Canadian fund with the first fund. Most of that was going to therapeutics. And so initially when we actually went out to fundraise, we said we were going to do 2/3 therapeutics and 1/3 other. And other included MedTech, devices, diagnostics, digital health, and digital therapeutics as well. But with the first fund, we did, like you mentioned, we didn't make a MedTech investment. I was one of the people on our team who I've seen every MedTech deal that came through because I was a MedTech guy internally at Amplitude. And so we, as you went, we'll get to that later, but I guess we sort of looked at it. And really a lot of it was just a function of timing and place and all these other factors. But predominantly we're biotech investors. So we do biotech stuff, early stage drug discovery. We start companies all the way from literally like idea on a napkin, work with entrepreneurs that we know. Sometimes it's spitting technology out of university. So as I mentioned, like, U of T and McGill and UBC, there's a lot of really cool tech, a lot of really cool people. And so how do you take those out of the university and start a company around it and really go help build and scale it? And then also we do a lot of Series A and Series B investing. So like later stage clinical companies, late preclinical. We do every type of indication. We can kind of look at everything. So the two major theses around what we go after are precision medicine, which is a very, it's a very loose definition, which can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And the other one is AI and machine learning. And obviously, we're going through an AI phase and craze now. We started investing in this in 2019. So, we've been looking at it for a little while. I have my own thoughts on that I'm sure you have too. That's different. But yeah, so that was our first fund. Second fund that we're currently on right now, it's 200 million US, so a little bit bigger. Our LPs are really happy with what we're doing. And so similar strategy where it's 2/3 biotech and 1/3 medtech and other. But again, as we mentioned, and we will get to, finding and figuring out the right opportunities is really difficult. And it's really, really hard to do. So yeah, that's probably the main kind of things about Amplitude. But yeah, other questions or responses, happy to kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah, so while we're on that, I just want to actually start telling the Canadian story because there's a lot of things to unpack. I think the audience listening in right now would be like, okay, there's an investor who actually has a fund that's a third dedicated to something outside of life sciences, but they're not pulling the trigger. Why? So we'll figure that out.
Yep.
But when Robin Williams was alive, he did this special in New York City, I think in the early 2000s, and I've watched it countless times. And I find Robin to be hilarious. Yeah. And he had this one-liner, and for all those Canadians listening in, I'm from Buffalo, so you can almost consider me Canadian, maybe. But he called Canada this loft apartment over a really great party. That was the one-liner. It was a loft apartment over a really great party. From MedTech, from life sciences, from this whole innovation ecosystem within healthcare. For all those who aren't in Canada right now and all over the world listening in, what's Canada good at? Like, what's going on up in Canada? Like, where are the hubs? What are some of the specialties? What are some of the benefits of being in Canada? Tell the Canadian story.
Yeah, so I would say it's regional specific in the sense of the major hubs right now are Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, the three largest cities. I would say each of them has their own advantages and things that they're really good at. So for example, like Montreal, a lot of pharma used to be in Montreal, so they're really strong in chemistry, and it's particularly like small molecule chemistry, which is like oral drugs essentially. So a lot of really cool like biotech companies from a small molecule side have come out of Montreal. Toronto is a lot of imaging and a lot of actually medtech. There's a huge, like especially product development, early stage devices, like biotech, like in terms of, like we have really good schools as well. So like a lot of the research and a lot of the ideas that come out of, like the U of T and McMaster and Waterloo and all these other areas is really, really interesting. Less on the biotech side, I would say, relative to the rest of the country. And you have a place like Vancouver, which is like disproportionately done really well in cell therapy, antibody engineering, protein engineering. One of the companies called Accelera, which was like, during COVID, which every company was overvalued, but like they got to a $15 billion valuation. And they, built the first antibody that was, able to treat COVID. So that's in terms of splits as to how you kind of think about, or how we think about sometimes each area. That being said, like there's a lot of stuff happening in Calgary and Alberta as well. Edmonton's doing a lot. I think what's really cool is the government's done a lot of work to invest and figure out, okay, where do we do really well? And one of the things, and this is, I would say, across the country that's really strong disproportionately is AI. And we have a lot of AI and machine learning talent, a lot of really good programs. The government's invested a ton of money. We have the Mila that's based in Quebec. We have the Vector Institute that's based in Toronto, and you have what's called Amy that's based in Edmonton. And so a lot of companies, particularly AI talent, are coming and recruiting. So like a lot of the big tech companies, as you can imagine, are coming up to Toronto and are coming up to Canada to set up shop. The other thing is also way cheaper, right? Like the FX and the currency is disproportionately different. So when you guys come down to visit, come up to visit us, it's like 30%. Like it's 70, I think it's 70 to 100 or 70 cents to a dollar. So that there's a real value, and especially if you raise in US dollars and then you come up to Canada. One, also you don't have to pay as much as you do in San Francisco and New York and Boston, and also there's a lot of tax incentives, and you get a lot of money back from the government and through IRAP, and there's a number of programs on the grant side where like you can get a lot of funding early, or especially early stage, that can really help drive and accelerate you. So from a cost perspective, also from a valuation perspective, right? Like we're not overpaying compared to US companies. So yeah, that's a little bit about how we think of sort of Canada and the advantages of it. It's cold. That's the only other thing. As you can imagine, being from Buffalo, that's one of the things that's not great. But I do have to say, Toronto, and obviously I'm biased because I'm from there, is I've been around the world, as you and I both talked about before. Toronto in the summertime on a nice day is one of the best cities ever.
So thanks for breaking down the Canadian ecosystem. What about the venture scene? And like you talked about the innovation, like is there money there?
There's not as much as we obviously like to have. I think a lot of that is structural. A lot of that is policy driven, in my opinion. A lot of that is we don't have the LPs, I don't think are doing enough as much as I think they could be. And the reason I say that is because like Canada has some of the largest pension funds in the world, right? In the world. Like CPPIB, the Canadian Pension Plan, is like $500 billion of assets under management. Caisse de dépôt is another one in Quebec. And to be fair to them, the Quebec scene and life sciences scene and government and pension funds there do a ton of work to help invest in the ecosystem. And honestly, our ecosystem in Canada would not exist if they weren't around, but you then look at, the Caisse de dépôt, you look at governments like Ontario has their own fund and BC has their own fund and Alberta and all these other places. And traditionally, historically, West Canada done really well as we've done a lot of real estate, we've done a lot of mining and energy. And so disproportionately, that's where people are going. I think the other struggle too is the fact that, for LPs to sell, especially biotech and biopharma, which is a bit different than medtech, people think it's so hard and it's difficult and the exits are not there and it takes 15 years to develop a drug, so you can't exit at the time. And you and I were talking about this just before, like you get companies that are, multi-billion dollars that are have existed for a couple of years. And those acquisitions are happening like that all the time. That's significant. There's real value there, sure. Right? And so I think from a funding perspective, there are definitely a lot of funds like ourselves, like Versant is up there, who's also now a multi-billion-dollar fund, and they really like Canada because of all the things that I've mentioned. So they're actually building companies. Like I was talking to actually one of the guys yesterday, who met them, and is a lawyer that's working with them, and they have this thing called Ridgeline that's based in Switzerland, but all the companies that they're building out are all in Canada. And there's a reason for that, because they know, and there's a lot of advantages to it. So Versant's there, Lumira is there, CTI is there. I'm sure there's a few other ones that I'm probably missing. Genesis as well, and those are more on the life science side. But the thing is we don't have the scale, because even though we have all this government money and all these pension funds, they're not investing into life sciences and venture. Tech there's a little bit more. There's bigger funds that are doing really well, but we just don't have the size and scale of the U.S. So it's and that's the other thing that's hard for us to compete, right? Is how do you compete with U.S. funds where it's I met a bunch of people yesterday where they're minimum check is 25 to 50 million bucks U.S. for initial first, and they can put in 200 million per company. It's unimaginable. You know what I mean? That's our fund size. What are we doing here? But that's the thing. The U.S. just has that size and scale that we just don't in Canada. So that's the one thing that it's there. The venture ecosystem is there, especially on the early stage side. There's a lot of benefit, like I mentioned, on the tax breaks and the incentives and a lot of grant money that's there. But really, the struggle we've always had and we've always talked about is the scale to grow and really build anchor massive, huge companies. We just don't have it right now. So hopefully that changes, but that's a big part of it.
You mentioned that there's tax incentives, and in general, there's other incentives with good talent, et cetera, that exist in Canada. Yes. Are you seeing international companies, U.S. companies that at least have a footprint in Canada, but still run their operations elsewhere?
Yes. So a lot of them will do R&D in Canada. So we've seen a lot of options, especially on the biotech side, where they'll run R&D, or they'll have an R&D team that's based in Canada and doing a lot of work there because of all the incentives I mentioned, where a lot of the executives will be in the U.S. So they'll just travel back and forth between. And to be fair, even for us, when we think about company building, so a lot of our money is dedicated towards Canadian opportunities, but we know that to grow and scale, those companies are going to need to have a U.S. presence, right? You need to be in Boston, you need to be in New York, you need to be in Minnesota. Unfortunately, and also more just because of the infrastructure and the people and the money and the bankers and all the things that happen. But yeah, we are definitely seeing the other way too, where people are coming to Canada and setting up a lot of shops there, just because, to your point, the talent is there, you don't have to pay as much, and you get a lot of tax breaks. And so it's well, that's pretty good. If you're a startup and you're always thinking about money, there's a lot of value to being able to do that.
I think it's a fun question, but don't overthink it.
Yeah.
I think to set the tone for people rationalizing what's happening, is it possible to start, grow, and exit a company in Canada without ever leaving the borders?
It's possible. It's difficult, but it's possible. So that's the simple answer. But yeah, I would say start for sure, grow for sure, scale and exit. It's a bit harder. I think then you need a bit more international, and you need to have your sort of network and tentacle. And that's also why, like, working with people like ourselves, like that's our job, right? Like fundamentally is, like, for example, one of the things that we've sold it when we were doing fundraising is for every dollar that we put into a company that we were a part of, those companies raised 10x the money, and most of that was from international and U.S. investors.
Okay.
So that's pretty significant, right? So that's part of what we ourselves as well.
Would it be fair to say then, in terms of any other country outside of Canada, there's a heavy reliance economically on the future of companies from Canada on the US? Or is there another country that you guys do so much more business with outside of the United States?
No, I would say definitely in the U.S. is
Okay.
is still the focus. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're spending a bit more time in Europe, and I think there's a lot of really cool stuff that's happening. But until you have boots on the ground, and even then, like I'm speaking to a bunch of people that are there, they want to come here too, right? Like, and also just even like, especially when we're getting to MedTech, on the MedTech side, like the market's here, like the commercial market is here. So even companies that we want to build in Canada, U.S. market access is the #1 goal. And if they don't have it, it doesn't work. Like the incentives don't make sense. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to do some simple math. Toronto is the imaging and medtech hub of Canada.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You're based in Toronto.
Yeah.
Now, the big question we want to answer on this is, why the hell haven't you invested in something in your backyard?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I do want to caveat this with that our team has. So like, at the BDC, actually some of our most successful exits were in MedTech. And my partners, my bosses have been MedTech investors for 20 years. So we definitely have an interest. There's definitely there. The struggle that we have, one, from a where we are in our stage of our fund and how we operate, is that for MedTech, the most difficult part that I think is highly underestimated, at least that I've seen looking into, is commercialization. And it's not, like, in my opinion, it's not necessarily product development, because there's a lot of really cool products that do really well. It's not necessarily getting regulatory approval. It's not necessarily going through the process, but it's how do you get somebody to pay for it? And also, not even just how do you get somebody to pay for it, but how do you then grow and scale when they pay for it? And the struggle, because we are in that world, is like, there's great devices, there's great technology, there's unbelievable research and unbelievable imaging that's doing amazing. But the commercialization question is one that people do not think about, in my opinion, as much as they should be. And then also, just for my function in terms of why we haven't invested, is we're a very specific mandate in terms of looking at MedTech of, like, what we call later stage. So commercial products, have approval, been in market, have probably like, $3 to $5+ million US in revenue, and really have growth scale to like get to 10, 20, 30, 50, 100. Because that's the other thing too is, I spend a lot of time looking at MedTech exits and talking to bankers and people that are really involved. And, we always ask, like, what stage does it exit, or what stage could you get IPO, or what stage get acquired, and what could you do? And you almost need a 10 to $20 million in revenue, right? Recurring annual for have like the bigger guys be like, okay, let's take a look at it. And then the other thing that's unfortunate, but it's just, we were talking about this before, is the size and scale of MedTech from a valuation exit perspective relative to biotech. It's just not the same. I mean? You just can't get it's just like the math is not there, right? And that's the struggle. That's the struggle as an investor, because like, there's a lot of really cool companies doing a lot of amazing things, but like, again, the way our firm is designed is we're a VC firm. We have a job to make money for our investors. And so our incentives are to make sure we can maximize and give that the best opportunity to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's dig into that. I mean, that makes sense. If you need to make money, which investors, VCs are supposed to do, we were talking about the numbers earlier. Biotech dwarfs, or biopharma dwarfs MedTech. So you're talking billions regularly versus millions, sometimes in the 10, sometimes in the
which is great, which is awesome.
It's money.
There's money. There's real money. Yeah.
But you're talking about massive money that we just don't really talk about that much in MedTech. Something that's over $1 billion is like making more than headlines. People talk about it for a long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Billions is.
I mean, bio's like there's a lot of activity that's happening. It's still huge, but it happens more often.
So then my thing is, you mentioned that you have a thesis, 2/3 and a third. It's quite obvious. I mean, if you're going to make money in biopharma and a dwarfs medtech, go for it. But then what do you see yourself doing with that other third?
Yeah, so the other third, and that's the other thing that's really nice with our LPs, is they've been very aware of, we're not mandated to invest that third. So that third is there to say that we want to do it, and we have the availability, and we have the capital, and we can look at it, and we are spending time doing that. But that's not to say that we have to do it. And that was a big conversation, especially with Fund 1 and the first one that we went to, where, And I would also say within that third bucket, what we call other, right? So like AI and machine learning companies, manufacturing companies and CMO companies, stuff that like, gene delivery, for example, that's like a bit outside biotech and biopharma. Those are all, I would say, in the same bucket. So it's not necessarily just a third medtech as much as it is like all these other things as well. But yeah, the thing that has been nice is that there's no mandate from our LPs to be like, you absolutely have to invest X amount into medtech. It's like, we think there's an opportunity. Here's what we think. Here's why it's good. But there's no like, pressure of us to be like, you have to do it, which is, I think it's good, like, because then it's up to us to make decisions and invest in good companies. And like I said before, like I've gone to later stage with a lot of medtech companies, and I want to make investments, and timing and luck and circumstances and all these other things happen. And then the other struggle too is also because we're in Canada, right? Our mandate is we have to invest a certain amount of our dollars into Canadian companies. And how many Canadian companies are there that have US market access, 5 to 10 million revenue, are commercial?
Yeah.
I would say 0 or a few, and we know them and have talked to them and are aware of them, right? So that's the other struggle. It's just finding the right opportunity. And then also, like, I think the US, I mean, the medtech ecosystem is so vibrant and there's so many other things that are happening, but like, we're not boots on the ground, right? So like, until we get it, like if we get a recommendation from an investor or a colleague that we know really well or have worked with for a long time, which is why, talking about the power of networking and what we do is, to us, that is way more valuable, right? Than us like going to source and find an opportunity that we'll like, see from somebody. It's much harder than somebody who's like, yeah, I'm in this company, we've been in it for a long time, here's a sell, here's what we're doing, here's how we're building, here's the revenue, like all of that's like, okay, that's much more helpful for us. So that's kind of, hopefully that gives you a little bit of answers into sort of understanding the dynamics behind it.
It definitely does. And I think this is an interesting question that I can't wait to hear your answer on. So I was talking to a European VC in probably the past, we'll call it 6 weeks. And they're in a very similar thesis as you guys are. But it's really interesting because they have to deploy capital, especially on great deals. But this is where like investing comes down to human behavior and like feeling, emotion. They said to us, or said to me, if there's a company in the United States who's revenue generating, or even like if it's a PMA product in clinicals and they're doing a pivotal, they've made it that far, for example, and they're coming to us, being a European VC, for money, our red flag goes off because like, why wouldn't they be a great deal for a US investor?
Which is true, wholeheartedly. And I actually got told that from my bosses, which you probably never think about. That's true, right?
But so then there's this catch-22. So if I'm an entrepreneur of a medtech, like I'm super frustrated, right? Because my job basically is 85 to 100% raising. I got a story, I got a technology, I got a team to run. It all sounds good in my eyes, and I'm super passionate about it because I'm leading the company. And I got to find money. And then, my friend ends up introducing me to a niche or some VC over in Europe, et cetera. And I'm ticking all their boxes, and they're telling me, well, why isn't someone in your backyard
behavior, psychology
investing in you then? Like, what's smelly about this deal? Why are you coming to me for money? And why didn't, someone else marquee name in the US invest? That's a real thing?
It's a real thing. It's definitely a real thing. And it's more of to your point, it's a human behavior. Fundamentally, every business and everything that we do is relationships and it's psychology. And like, to me, one of my unlocks, and speaking about the book and all these other things that we'll get to, that's been a super helpful thing just to see, because you see it. And also, at the end of the day, VC is a FOMO business, and you see it everywhere. I'm sure you see it just as much as I do. And you want to work with VCs who know what they're doing and have done and have track record and talk to you and build relationships, but also like who actually do the work, because there's a lot of VCs that don't. And will just tack along. And I mean, I was talking to a CEO actually, a friend of mine. She's Canadian, born and raised in Toronto, did her PhD, but she moved to SF and started a biotech company. Now she's a CEO, she's running it, she got a big deal, and she's doing really well. And it was so funny because the first time I met, I was just like, a Canadian like guy like myself, just talking to you as a person. And she was like, you don't understand how rare it is to meet VCs who are like actually helpful and say what they do and like are nice and are not assholes, and you know what I mean? And I was just like, to me, I was like shocked, because I was like, what do you mean? Like, that's my job. Like, that's what we're supposed to do. And she's like, you don't understand. Like, that's not how it is here. And I was like, weird. Okay, did not think about that. But to your point, a lot of it is still psychology, and a lot of it is still based on that.
And I never understood that. Like, I don't know how this industry has taken the venture capitalists and propped them up on this pedestal.
I don't know why.
At the end of the day, if we call spade a spade, right? Call it what it is. These middlemen and women are taking money from somebody else and waving their magic wand on where that money goes. And that's it.
Yeah.
And all those
Yeah.
VCs listening in right now, I know that you do a lot. But it's supposed to be a lot
I'm one
more.
too. I understand, but I agree with you.
But
You're
it's
right.
like you're taking
Yeah.
other people's money
Yeah.
and investing
That's
in
it.
someone else,
Yeah.
and for some reason you're a demigod.
Yeah. I don't know why.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah. That's yeah.
I'm,
But
I'm,
another thing.
you're
Yeah. But it's
okay.
true. Yeah.
I'm glad that you're boots on the ground, able to talk
Yeah.
and actually tell people what it is that you
But
do.
it's also just honesty too. Like I believe in a lot of like, I'll tell you how I feel all the time. And I'm like, to me, it's like if you're a nice person, if you work hard, and if you just tell people how you feel, those are like, that's like disproportionate. Like you'll be successful at anything. To me, that feels basic. You know what I mean? But like for a lot of people, that's not how it works. And I'm like, how? What? What world am I living? Right?
So what else is supposed to work within our industry of healthcare? Going back to who you are, you're an MD.
Yes.
Right? So you got
Yes.
your doctorate degree and you were telling your story and how you fell into VC. Reiterate whatever you want on that one. So how does an MD and why should an MD think about becoming a VC? But
Yeah.
when you become a VC,
Yeah.
in
How is
this life science, biopharma, medtech world
Yeah.
that we live in, what's the value add of having an MD be a VC?
Yeah. So I'll start with how I got in, and then I can answer the second part. So for me, it was first of all, there was no design in trying to do this. Like literally, I did not know what venture capital was before I got into it. Like no idea, no context. Thank you very much. I'm going through this too quickly. That's a problem.
Not at all.
Yeah.
That's what it's meant to do. Be
yeah,
drunk.
exactly. And so when I was in medical school, I had literally no idea about entrepreneurship, no idea about innovation, no idea about venture capital. Literally, the only thing I knew about it was the show Silicon Valley. I don't know if you know the one on HBO, and that's it. Like, and even then, I was like, this is weird. These people are weird. VCs are weird, and it's not that far off, but especially in the tech world, I've heard. And so like I didn't know what it was, and literally what happened was I was in the summer, as I mentioned, like I graduated, I didn't get into residency, so I was thinking about going back to school. I applied to do that, I got in, but I had time off, like in the summer. And so, excuse me, I got advice from my dad, and so I was applying to every job. Like I was emailing people, I was messaging people. I think I sent, before I looked at the VC side, I think like I was looking at consulting firms, I was looking at banking, I was looking at all these other things. I think I sent like 75 to 100 emails and job applications and went nowhere, zero. I actually had 2 interviews, one with a consulting firm, LEK in London, and then Jeffries in New York. That's a whole crazy story too, because like I actually found out I had an interview like 3 days before, and I was on a grad trip in Hawaii, and then I had to learn all of investment banking like in a day, like on a plane, like then to go to New York, and they asked me all these questions. I was like, because I didn't do any math, right? Like I went to medical school, like you know what I mean? Like I did no finance, like zero finance background, like nothing. They're like, yeah, tell me about enterprise value, and I was like, good question. So anyway, that was the whole story. So but then to get into VC, my dad's like, hey, we heard this thing called venture capital, and I was like, oh, you mean in tech? Like that's only what they do. And he's like, no, in healthcare. I was like, what? I did not, like, no idea, like zero, right? And I think that's the other thing too, is like a lot of the reasons why I want to write the book and I want to talk about this is like, it's people don't know this exists. Like most people around the world have no idea what we do, why it's important, what matters, why this is. And I think the stuff that you're doing is amazing. Like the fact that we can just get it out to people and talk about like, hey, this is happening, this is what's going on. I think it's really cool. I think we've really been an awesome industry. And so anyway, he told me about that, and I was like, okay. So basically what I did was I found the top 75 VC firms in healthcare around the world, and I just cold emailed them. It was like a Sunday afternoon. It was in August, like I think it was like 16th. I don't remember the day. And I was just like, fuck it. Like I'm just gonna send an email. I was like, hey, my name's Anish. I just graduated medicine. If you're open to a chat, I would love to. And so as you can imagine, a lot of people don't respond because that's how the world works. But a few people did, and some people wrote me emails, some people wrote me messages, and then one person, they're like, hey, we saw your application. We actually have an internship program. And the internship program at the time wasn't advertised, so I didn't even know it existed. It wasn't like, I'm doing this to get that program. I literally had no idea. And they're like, hey, do you want to go through interviews? And I was like, yeah, but I'd interviewed already, as you can imagine. I've been rejected. I was like, yeah, of course I want to interview, but like, I'm not getting this job. And so I did 3 rounds of interviews, and 2 days before I was about to move to London for the master's, is when I got into Amsterdam. And so 2 weeks later, I was like on a flight, and I moved, and life changed just because of that. And so to your point about why MDs are so valuable or what makes us different, I think, and it was stuff that I learned when I was in Amsterdam, but even like my bosses always reiterated to me too, is there's not a lot of us. And the difference is for what we do is we've been in a clinic and we've been in a hospital and an operating room and seen patients and treated them and understand. And if you're a scientist, if you're a technologist, if you're an engineer, if you're somebody that comes from any other world, until you've been in a system and seen it operate and seen it work, you don't really know. You know what I mean? Like healthcare's slow, healthcare's hard. Doctors don't like to change. Like every technology and every app under the sun that like is going to change your life doesn't work because they don't want to use it. Nobody adheres to medication. So how are you going to get them to adhere to like all of these things that to me is basic, or what I think is basic? People are like, wow, I never knew that. You know what I mean? Like I talk to, sometimes I'll talk to my bosses or I'll talk to scientists like, I didn't think about that. And I'm like, again, and that's why I think the value is, right? Is like if you've been on the end side of things and you've seen that, it's super helpful for me because my thing, and it's funny, I was actually talking to a ophthalmologist yesterday who's a surgeon, and she actually left, did her MBA, did her PhD, she's now working in the innovation ecosystem, and she was saying the same thing, and she's like, people just don't get it otherwise. But once you've been there and then you come to this, you're like, oh, this makes sense to me now. Like, of course, like, okay. And I think that perspective is very helpful because nobody else has it. And there's a lot of value. And like, and that's the other thing too, is like, I think when you go through medical school, you only have this idea that there's only one path. It's become a doctor. But that skill set, that mindset, that critical thinking, that drive, that energy, that ambition, if you apply it to any other thing, like the amount of success you can get is unbelievable. And so yeah, that's part of why I think MDs are so valuable. And I think also like investors know that too. Like I've been told, like they're like literally in all of Canada in venture, in terms of like the number of MDs who are venture capitalists is like me. It's like me, and there's literally it's like me, and then there's one other guy who is like a partner and he's been around for 40 years. So it's like very different, right?
But when you interact with the entrepreneurs, do you see like this glimmer in their eye of, wow, he understands, he gets it,
yes,
I can have
1000%, because they like, and that's the thing is like, fundamentally, I know for entrepreneurs, it's all storytelling. And I know they've had so many conversations with people who have literally no idea what they do. And that education initially is a lot for them to do. For me, I immediately know, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, you're in neuro and this is what you do. It's like, okay, I know, even if I don't know the answer immediately, I know I can find it. I know it's quick. I know what the symptoms kind of are. I know what the side effects are. And also, like, all my best friends are still in medicine. So, you know what I mean? Like, I can go call any of them and be like, hey, what's going on here? Like, what's happening? And they'll tell me like that. And that is a big advantage too, especially as an MD. If you come out of it, having all your friends that you know and people that you know to be like, hey man, I just would like to like double check, like, this is actually real or not. That like insight, especially from when you're in the hospital and in the physician's office, you can't get that anywhere else. So that's a big game changer for sure.
So there is life after medicine.
There is.
When you're an
does
MD.
exist. It does exist. It does exist.
Did you enjoy this?
Awesome. The best. Cheers. We got to do this too.
In person.
In person, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for sharing this wine, being
amazing
in this Dungeness studio apartment somewhere in San Francisco.
Yeah, exactly.
Finally meeting in person.
Yep.
And disseminating your story.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for listening. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers, man. This was fun.
So want to jump into speaking of media.
Mm-hmm.
We've known each other long before you did it, meaning write the book.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe a lot of people feel this way. Some people feel this way. I know that there's some people who are like, no, I never want to write a book.
Yeah.
But I've run into a lot of people who are like, oh, I would love to write a book. But there's been like this feeling inside of me personally where it's like, I wouldn't mind writing a book.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I have anything crazy important to say. It's not about like my life memoir and all that stuff, but it's like, it would be interesting to have your thoughts on some beautifully binded, colorful thing
that exists in the real world, that's physical and you can see, and it was yours, an idea,
and when we die, it will be left behind. And wherever you stand on legacy, how long that's going to last. But it is something that's that is left behind, and I've had a huge amount of respect for that. And so I'm sitting here holding your two books, and you and I had a Zoom call not even that long ago. I mean, I think we caught up. Well, we caught up recently. And
but then before, it was like a month before.
And you were telling me that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you wrote not only a book, you wrote two.
Yeah, in summer. Yeah,
right. So I need to tell this story now. Yeah. Because like I said, I'm genuinely, hopefully someday in my life, I'm going to write a book.
You will.
I would love to.
Yeah.
You've actually made introductions to, what are they called?
Publishers. Like independent agents.
So you made two introductions. I've had the phone calls. They're super interesting. I'm learning more about like what it actually means to write a book.
Yeah.
But I'll take my time and figure it out.
Yeah.
But the thing is like you wrote two in less than a year, and I want to know, what is it like? Describe to the world, what does it feel like to write a book?
Yeah.
What does it take to write a book?
Yeah.
What's the process of writing a book?
Yeah.
And what's the process today versus how it used to be?
Yeah, a lot of things there. Okay, let's start with
just go rant.
Yeah. No, because I think they're all reasonable questions. It's like it's hard. Because I think to your point, I had this idea before I got into actually doing it of like what it looked like or what it took. I think, historically it was, you have to, and again, nonfiction is different from fiction. So that's another caveat. I don't know enough about the fiction world, but I know it's like, you need outlines and agents and blah, 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 and whatever. But nonfiction is, you used to need an agent, you used to need a publisher, you used to need to like sell a certain number of copies, you used to have to like buy most of them. And also on the nonfiction side, like if you don't really have a huge audience, they won't touch you because they're like, we're not going to sell, right? Because for them, again, it comes down to incentives, it comes down to economics, it comes down to like, can we actually push this out and can we do this? And so what I like about how the world has changed is now you can go independent. Now you don't need anyone. Like you can literally work in an independent publisher, which is, all the people that I've introduced you to. And what's interesting is, especially one of the people I introduced you to, May, who I actually met in over the break. I was in Hawaii.
She lives in Hawaii.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I actually met her for drinks because she was actually staying at the hotel next to us. Again, crazy random occurrence. But we spoke to her, and like I remember talking to her at the time when I was writing this, and she's like, "Don't work with a publisher." I was like, well, "That's so weird. Why would you say that?" Like, she's like, "Yeah," she's written best-selling books that are on the New York Times best-selling list and all that. She's like, "Don't do it." She's like, one, the economics are not there, and two, you don't control your message and you don't control your IP. So like, if any point you want to do something different, or if you want to change it or take it, or want to go do it, you have no control. That's not your book; it's their book. And I was like, wow, never thought about that, because I would never think about this. Because what do you mean, like it's their book? Like I wrote the book. They're like, no, that's not how it works. And so like hearing that was super helpful, because I was like, okay, like I can do it. And to me, that's the other thing too, is like she was telling me a story of somebody who, this was a female entrepreneur that was like super invested in AI and had been in AI for a long time. And you know how fast AI is going, as we do every single day. And like that is nothing. And the publisher, she wrote the book, like finished the book, finished the manuscript. I was like, yeah, we're not going to publish this for another year, because like our timing of like when we need to release and announce and put all the marketing and all this stuff. And she's saying that like literally this book is obsolete in a year. What do you mean you can't publish it? Like it's done. Like the book is done. And so hearing that, I was like, whoa, okay. Like, and what I liked about this process was like you get to control everything. Like whatever book you want to write in whatever style and whatever you want to do. And obviously what I like working with independent publishers is like they'll help coach you. At the end of the day, it's up to you. Like you have to decide that it's important and have to do it. In terms of the process of kind of how I started and how I got introduced and wanted to do this, it was, and I've heard this on other podcasts too, because I think it's important, is like it's almost like it's such a burning desire in you to do it that you like have to. It's almost like a pull, right? Like you're like, I need to do this. And the reason, especially for the career one, this book, Stolen Thoughts, when to your point, even though technically I wrote the book in 2 years, this is more a collection of poems I've already written. So I got very randomly into writing poetry a year ago. You and I have discussed this before. I started writing as a hobby side thing that I did many years ago in 2018 when I left medicine. I read about everything and a lot of things. And so poetry was just one of those weird angles that I decided to take, and I had no idea why. And so this was just a collection of them. But this one was literally like start to finish, like brand new.
Tell me about the book real quick.
Yeah, so it's called Stolen Thoughts. It's a book of poetry. And like if you want to take, you can like take a look at it. Basically, every poem is in a specific style. They're all different topics. They're all about different unique things. You basically start off with like a word or an idea, and you just basically take it and see where it ends up. So this is like, I've written like 110 poems now. There's like 40 of them. So
do you know this book backwards and forward?
Not all of them, but I obviously I've
do you
read
have a favorite?
I do.
You have a favorite?
I do.
Read it right now.
Okay.
I want you to read it.
You want me to read the
I want everyone riding to work right now, or being a couch bum watching this on YouTube, or whatever it is you're doing, how you're digesting this information.
Yeah.
I want you to hear one of the poems that Dr. Anish Kaushal has written.
Okay. It's okay. I don't know if a lot of people are gonna like it, but you know what? It's one of my favorite. Yeah. Which is, I know, I love it. It's like, yeah. You're right. It's called Religion Is.
Oh, do it.
So
not
yeah.
contentious.
It's not at all. Okay. Religion is. Religion is confusing. Religion is odd. Religion is strange. Religion is questionable. Religion is controversial. Religion is routine. Religion is shared. Religion is community. Religion is family. Religion is tribal. Religion is traumatic. Religion is violent. Religion is ruthless. Religion is propaganda. Religion is indoctrination. Religion is stubborn. Religion is painful. Religion is a grift. Religion is dying. Religion is an addiction. Religion is powerful. Religion is hopeful. Religion is purposeful. Religion is personal. Religion is moralistic. Religion is principled. Religion is transforming. Religion is helpful. Religion is volunteering. Religion is giving back. Religion is illuminating. Religion is believing. Religion is faith. Religion is important. Religion is.
So I don't know how you all feel about that. Yeah, clap louder, producer, who's also a physician. That was amazing. I mean,
Thank you.
I don't know how long those types of poems take you. I mean, it's obviously clearly a definition, a multifaceted definition of religion, but anyone who's religious in their own capacity and belief, I do,
Yeah.
very strong.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for sharing
Thank
that
you.
with
No,
us.
I appreciate that. That's great. Yeah, yeah.
And now you got a little bit of an ad out there for not only
Yeah, for
about
the other
religion,
one.
but
Yeah.
about the book itself.
That's what
So
else. Yeah.
Stolen Thoughts.
Yeah.
You were talking about the production or the
Mhm.
writing process of
Mhm.
this.
Yeah, so this one, as I mentioned, this one was a collection,
Okay.
and then this one was brand new. So
Okay.
in this one, the reason why I wrote this one again, like I said before, of like the pull of like I had to do something like this, which was I had so many conversations with young people who don't like where they are and want to figure out how to get into a new place. And when I was going through all the things that I went through, there was no book, there was no playbook, there was no guidebook, there was no person, there was no idea. That was it. So to me, that was very huge to be like, okay, I'm talking to all these people. Clearly this conversation comes up all the time, and like to me there was a step-by-step process, and nobody ever told me the process or thought about it, and I was like, I feel like I can tell someone about this. I mean, also use it as a way to talk about my own story, because my own story, as I mentioned and talked to you about, like I think there's value in hearing story, because people don't learn with logistics and data and graphs and all that. It's story. Like story is like one of the most powerful things. And so also because I wanted to do it where it was like very bare bones, it's very direct, it's very concise. Like literally the feedback I've gotten so far from people who've read it is it's such a unique. It's like so concise and so direct that they love that, like, oh, they like would like to read this. Like it flows really well and it's unique and it's different. And so to me that was honestly the reason why. And so in terms of the actual process itself, basically like I sketched out an outline. I had an idea of like the step-by-step process. I wrote like a first draft. I basically just went through it. I wrote like the steps and had the outline. And then one of the independent publisher I was working with, she was like, actually, like, you write a lot of personal stuff too. Like I write a journal and I've been doing that for many years. And she was like, why don't you add that to it too? And so like basically the way the book is set up is every chapter, the initial chapter is an idea about like what to do. Basically like here are the steps, here's what you need to do, here are the things that I've learned, here's what's good and bad. And then the end of the chapter is a journal entry of like me talking to my younger self as if I was 16, being like, hey, this is like really how I feel and really what's going on. And what's cool is like all the feedback I've gotten is like, oh, the personal stuff is way like that's like I remember that, like I'll remember that. And so yeah, anyway, that was the process. I started basically in June because I write. I think a lot of this too is like I write all the time anyway. So to me, it was not like it was like almost like I needed to get it out there because like it was like not easy, but like I knew what I wanted to do before I even got there. And then yeah, it was a lot of editing, manuscripts, sending it back like I sent to a bunch of people to take a look at, gave me some really helpful feedback. And then it went through the publishing process and put it out. And yeah, it's really fun because what I like about this is like, this is mine. And to your point, like this is something I've created and this is something that's unique to me, but I get to decide how far this goes. Like, if I don't talk about this till the end of time, it still exists, but I don't do very well. Versus I think like, especially now today, like we're in a situation where like 2024 is going to be a really weird year in general. We have an election coming up. That's just here. But there's war going on. The entire world is going through a lot of shit. And unfortunately, the way cycles work and history works is for every up, there will be a down. And we've gone through a massive up since 2008. We haven't really seen the down. COVID was kind of there, but basically like
I really feel like there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are heavily disagree with you after raising capital in 2023.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Like it was allegedly a shitstorm in 2023. However, if you're saying there's a further pit that we're going to fall into,
could be. Which is,
I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm too.
Buckled up.
I hope I'm too.
I'm buckled up.
Yeah, and again, the only reason I'll to say this, like, I think, especially not even just entrepreneurs as much as like people where they are in their careers. Like, I don't think we're gonna have, like we think of our grandparents. Like, if I think of my grandparents and parents' generation where they worked at one firm for 35 years and like that's all they did and they showed up, that's gone. That disappeared, right?
Gone.
And I think we're going into a world where like, figuring out your story, figuring out how to sell yourself, figuring out how to like pivot into it, but also like you have choice and direction. And also, all the tools right now are available. Like, you can find whatever job you want. Like, LinkedIn is an unbelievable resource.
Oh, yeah.
And Google is an amazing resource. And if you use it in the right way, you can find all the answers.
Yeah.
And also, being able to talk to people, having a conversation, reaching out. And also, like, a lot of people, if you do it the right way and you send them the right messages, people love talking about themselves. I've learned that for a long time. And there's a lot of value in, like, hearing somebody's story. And then also just asking, like, hey, do you know anybody that does this? Do you know anybody that does that? And if you make a good impression, they do a lot to help you. So that's honestly, that was the reason why I wanted to write the book and how it kind of happened.
So a couple questions on that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Are we good on time, by the way?
Yeah, we're definitely good.
Yeah.
So my questions are, you have this Word document that you open up on your laptop one day, right?
Go down,
and you just start writing and writing and writing and writing. Is there a discipline that you took? Like you hear sometimes, just start writing. Or you have to write a page a day.
Yeah.
Did you have a discipline for writing your book?
This one, I would say yes and no, but it was more like a self-discipline. Like I kind of told myself so basically the way it worked with the publisher I was working with was like we met every week, right? And so like I just wanted to be able to produce something for it to be like I worked on it this week, I promise. And there were 2 weeks where like I didn't do it. Like I was traveling and I couldn't work on it, so I was like, I'm sorry, I like can't do it. You know what I mean? Excuse me, I just don't have the time. But there's other times where like literally I would just sit at the computer for like 3 hours and I would write like 4 chapters. And again, I think the important thing is like when people get in their head is like you have to remember your first draft is gonna suck. Like your initial, when you start, it will suck. It doesn't matter. The point is to get it out there. And then as you go, you'll refine and edit and you get feedback. And, this doesn't make sense. This does. Okay, spend more time on this, spend more time on that. So I think that the struggle, to your point at the beginning, is people are like, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to start, I don't know what to do it. And again, it sounds like a just start thing, but it's really like, even if it sucks, even if it's horrible, like there's a backspace button. You can delete it. It's no problem. But to get your thoughts out there and to put it out there, even if it makes no sense, even if you're the only one that understands it. I mean, I think the other thing I go back to too, just in terms of writing, is write how you speak. Like if you were to tell somebody this, and I think the thing sometimes with a lot of people is they make it technical, they make it complicated, they make it like, oh, here's the 5 points of data that you need to know, like obviously, yeah, like, oh, look how happy I am. Like, no, at the end of the day, the best writing is, to me, simple writing, direct writing, concise writing, clear writing.
Yep.
And if you do it how you speak to someone, people will respond to that.
Yep.
In my opinion. So that's the way I've thought about it, and the way it worked for me. Yeah.
Okay, so you when you write something in a Word document and you say you put the last period there, we call that a manuscript.
Yeah.
Just for all those listening, concisely.
Yeah.
You have your manuscript.
Yeah.
In the modern day of now 2024,
yeah.
what does self-publishing really mean? Like, how do you take that Word document with the last period to me holding this book with your sexy photo on the back?
Yeah. So I had the benefit of working with an independent publisher, which I've introduced and told you about. I think that was a super helpful process as I went through it. Now going forward, do you necessarily need them? Not necessarily. Basically, what you can do now, and I think there's a lot of people that do this, is like Fiverr and Upwork, which are freelancer sites that people can go on. They do a lot of editing. Essentially, once you have the manuscript, you have to figure out how to format the book properly into what you kind of want to do. And then Amazon right now, they have this thing called Amazon KDP, like the independent publisher, where you literally submit your manuscript, you submit a title page and a cover page, which also the publisher helps with in terms of formatting and design and all of the other things, which is super helpful. And then they'll run the books for you. And what's great about that is traditional publishing houses, you used to need to buy or like a certain number of copies, or you need to, like when they go for a publishing run, it's like, oh, we need 10,000 copies because we have to sell at Indigo or whatever, Barnes & Noble or all these places that are all over. And with independent publishing, with this is like, it only gets made when you order it. So like I don't have to hold 5,000 books in my house like to make sure that it goes through. And to your point, that's an asset that like now exists forever. And so from the process of starting the manuscript to getting there, it took time in terms of like you have the manuscript, you need to get it edited. You need like either you can work with a professional. I sent it to a lot of friends of mine that I trust. I just got comments from like 10 or 15 people that I know. I put their names and like added a lot of their comments and feedback. And so I did a lot of the editing myself, which I don't know if it's good or bad, but just how it was. And then from that point you design the cover. Then honestly on Amazon right now, literally you can do it. And that was the other thing that I asked this other person, Mamie, who I mentioned to you. She was like, yeah, that's way better to do it. Like that's the amount of value and upside, and also the economics. Because like it doesn't, as you can imagine, it doesn't cost a lot to sell this or like to make it. It's a couple bucks and it's a couple things, but like you theoretically in terms of value, you can sell it for, and you can decide on pricing and how much you want to do. And so for me, like especially on that note, like I wanted to make this something that like anybody, like a student could buy. You know what I mean? Like a high school kid can spend 15 bucks and buy this book. Like that was the goal.
Yeah.
And to me, that was super important because I get to control that. Versus if you're at an independent one, a traditional publishing house, like you don't have a lot of control. Yeah. Like it's out of your hands. So yeah.
So signing off on that particular topic, for all those people out in the world who has ever even had a shower idea of writing their own book, writing their own story, whatever, it's very possible.
Very possible. And also what I would say first is, it's hard. In general, anything in life is hard. I think it really needs to be like a pull, right? Like I don't, and again, it's funny because I actually heard this, I was listening to a podcast with a guy called Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you're familiar, but very multi-best-selling author. He's done a lot of things. And he said this comment. He was like, if you, like, there's a lot of mediocre crap that's out there. There's hundreds of thousands of books that are out there that never do anything. And you really need to feel like it's something that you need to say or you need to talk about, you don't see out there. And that was what this was for me. Like I didn't see this. So I was like, well, if I don't see this, like I'm sure there are people that this would be helpful for, because it was helpful for me. Like that's how I got here. And I've told this to other people who it's worked for. Like I remember even my brother. So my brother right now, he's a physician too, but like I gave him all the steps and I was like, this is what you need to do. He ended up getting like consulting interviews with firms like around the world, like in 2 months, based on like exactly what he was doing. And this is a guy who was in medicine. And again, like different career, no background, no context, never done anything like that before. And so, but again, that information wasn't there. And so I felt very grateful that I went through the process. I could give it to somebody else. And so that was the kind of reason. So yes, it's definitely possible, but I would say you need to have a lot of like, there has to be something there that's like, I have to do this. Like I have to tell someone about whatever it is that you want to do. And also I think the biggest thing too is like construct an outline. Like figure out like, okay, how would you format this? How would you, the structure, the flow, where would you want to do it? And then through that process, you'll see like, okay, am I missing something? And also give it to like friends, give it to like people that you know, like give it to your parents, give it to friends of yours, give it to colleagues and be like, hey, what do you think about this idea? Or like what I'm doing? Like, would this be valuable? Would this be helpful to you?
Yeah.
I think getting that feedback is really helpful as well.
Where can we buy these?
Amazon. So you can Amazon, if you look at my name, Anish Kaushal, or you can look up the books. It's called, one of them is called From Here to There, Anish Guide to Career Transitions, and then the other one's called Stolen Thoughts. And yeah, the poetry book, yeah, Stolen Thoughts, and then the career book. So, and yeah, and also if there's other people in your life, like particularly like to me, it's really young people. It's like high school students, it's university students, it's master students. It's people that are not happy where they are, or it's their kids, or cousins, or anybody. Especially this one. This is the one that more like I just really want people to read this, because I think my goal is like I want to get to a place where a year or 2 years from now I have somebody come up to me and be like, hey man, I read your book and I changed my life and now I'm in a better plot, and thank you so much. And that's it. That is the goal. That is success. That is what success is for me. So yeah, if you have people in your life, feel free to tell them about it. But yeah, thank you.
Mic drop, last question for you as we sign off on this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have bantered on this idea, and I know you have very big visions of it. Mm-hmm. What is the value of media?
Today, I think it's infinite, if I have to say that. I think especially as an independent, because media is, unfortunately, we spend way too much time on our phone, and we spend way too much time listening and talking and looking at videos and scrolling through different things. Most of it's garbage, and most of it's not going to help you. It's not beneficial. It's not going to do anything. But if you can educate people, if you can talk about what you do, you can talk about the value of it, that's super helpful. And also the other thing that I think people forget is media, if you make something online, it lasts for a long time. So like for like even the thing, for example, we did the interview, right? That was 2 years ago now, maybe 3 years ago now, yeah. That we did it. I had a friend of mine reach out to me and was like, oh, that was a great interview you did. And I was like, my man, I did that interview like 3 years ago. But you know what I mean, right? And like, I know I've talked to you and I've talked to, some of your colleagues that worked on MedTech Money, and it's like, yeah, we get, asked about ideas that we do like years ago. Like, oh, we heard a podcast that was here, and oh, this person that does this, and that's super helpful. And I've heard this from somebody else too, where, there's this guy who's actually a good role model, is a guy called David Senra, and he does this podcast called Founders. And I think I might have told you about it. And it's a solo podcast, which is the goal of what I want to eventually do and build as well. It's only him. There's nothing else. And all he does is he read books and he talks about them. That's it. There's nothing complicated about it. There's no thing. All he does is he reads biographies of the best entrepreneurs in history. That's it. There's no complicated extra whatever. And he said, I remember listening to him talk, and it was just a couple of years ago, and he was like, yeah, I have people come up to me that are like, oh, I heard your podcast you did like 2 years ago. And like, it was amazing for me, and I'm a super helpful thing. And that's the other thing with, I think if you take timeless content and the stuff that you're doing and like listening to people talk about like ideas that last a long time, is you'll have people who have never heard your name that in 5 years from now are not in this industry that will hear you and listen and learn, and that could be helpful and that could change your life down the road. And I think if like I always come, we were talking about this before, the long-term mindset. Like I come to this with like, I don't need to solve your problem today, but like at one point in time in your life, if you struggle or go through or something, and or have heard or have done something, and you come back to that person and you trust that person, and they show you your track record, that's super valuable. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of especially independent media. Like there's a reason why Rogan and Tim Ferriss and Lex Fridman and even Tucker Carlson, who people have he was obviously the biggest one on Fox. He's now independent and he knows the value of it because it's international. I think that's the other thing too, is scale. Right? Is traditional media, you are in certain markets with certain access, with certain advertising, with certain messaging, you do whatever. With the internet, you are everywhere, right? Like, and Tucker talked about this. I remember hearing on a podcast, he's like, I forget how big the world is. And he's like, oh, I'll go to like Spain or Argentina, and like all these people know exactly what I'm talking about and are up to date with everything that's going on. There's a lot of downside to that too, and that's the other thing with media that you have to sometimes be careful about. But I think it's like if you teach people, if you educate people, like my whole thing is education. My whole thing is like, how do I, like literally it comes down to, how do I teach myself what I wish my 16-year-old self knew? That's it, fundamentally. Like that is the person I'm writing for. That's my audience. That's who I'm talking to. But I know there's a lot of people that just never got the access, don't have it. And to me, it's like, if you can make it free, if you can do it in audio, if you can do it in video, if you can do it in books, if you can do it in writing, there's a lot of value, in my opinion. So yeah, to your point. And I mean, you've done this with a podcast, right? You can tell me as much as I can tell you, like, how valuable was this? Just starting the podcast and doing MedTech Money, and how many opportunities and how much business opportunities and how much all the other things. So yeah, there's a ton of value. I see massive amounts of value, and I think it's only going to get bigger. Yeah.
What's your future hold?
The short answer is I don't know, because I think that's what I've learned in my life is you have plans and ideas, and life happens, and then you have to figure it out as you go. Media will definitely be a big part of it. I'm doing a lot of stuff. I've actually, it's funny you say this. I was talking to a guy yesterday about a podcast potentially starting at Amplitude, and to work to do some stuff in the biopharma world, exactly what you're doing in MedTech, but do it in biotech, because I think there's just massive opportunity and nobody's really doing it really well. I'm thinking about I might be starting another podcast on macroeconomics in VC. That's like with another friend of mine. I have my own thing. I've been writing for a long time. The goal this year really is to like, how do I get my writing out there more? So like the poetry stuff is like one small component of everything else I do and talk about. I mean, I started writing in 2018, and then really started releasing it as a blog in 2021. And since that time, in 2021, my goal is to write 100 blog posts in a year. I wrote 500, so very busy, as you can imagine. And to date, I've written now 883, and that was in 3 years. And so to me, it's like, well, and this is all working full time and writing a book and doing all the other things that I'm doing. And so it's like, well, if I can do that, and then the goal is if I can take all of those, put those into audio, put those into video, do I think one of them is good? Yeah. So that's it. And to me, it's all you need is one. Like Mark Cuban used to talk about in his book, is like all you need is one idea, one person, one change, one thing. And the more you put stuff out there, the more you you just go and go and go, it comes back. It really does. And we were talking about karma before. I'm a huge believer in that. And I just know like I've been working so hard at this for so long in silence. Now it's like, okay, I gotta be out there now. Like that's the goal, which is scary in its own way because I don't really like being out there. But I also know that in order for like people to hear this, I have to. So it's like a pull. It's again the pull. Like that comes back to like I just have to do it now.
So John, I want to say the MedTech Startup Podcast is super blessed to have a MD be a podcast producer. Did you think going to medicine would lead you to becoming a media production agent?
Absolutely not.
How valuable is it to be an MD on a medical podcast?
Hugely.
Awesome. Back to you, Anish.